The silence in this house used to terrify me. Now it's the sweetest sound I know. March 15th, 2024. That's the day I took my finger and pressed delete on my own children's contact information. Best decision I've made in 79 years of living. You think I'm cruel. You think I'm a bitter old man who gave up on family. Let me tell you what really happened. Let me tell you about 50 years of being the family's ATM machine, the emergency contact, the problem solver who never got a single thank you. Let me tell you about the day I realized that love without boundaries isn't love at all. It's self-destruction. I raised 4 kids, Michael, Sarah, David, and Jennifer. Put them all through college, paid for weddings, helped with house down payments. When Sarah's husband left her with 3 kids under 10, guess who moved in for 6 months to help? When Michael's business failed in 2018, guess who wrote the check to keep his family from losing their home? When David got his DUI, guess who sat in that courthouse and paid the lawyer? When Jennifer decided she needed to find herself in her 40s and abandon her 2 teenagers, guess who took them in? Me. Always me. James Crawford, the family bank. James Crawford, the fixer. James Crawford, who apparently had nothing better to do at 75 than clean up everyone else's mess. But here's what really gets me. Here's what kept me awake those long nights in this empty house. Not one of them ever called just to talk. Not one birthday remembered without my late wife reminding them first. Not one Sunday dinner invitation. Not one "How are you doing, Dad?" Just crisis calls, emergency calls. The phone would ring at 11 p.m. and my heart would sink because I knew it meant somebody needed money or needed me to fix something. The breaking point came last Christmas. I'd been alone for 2 years since Margaret passed. 2 years of holidays by myself while my children made excuses. We're going to the in-laws this year. The kids have school stuff. Maybe next year, Dad. Always maybe next year. So I did something I'd never done before. I invited them. All of them. Told them I was making Margaret's famous prime rib roast. Told them I missed having family around the tree. Told them I'd like to see my grandchildren open presents. Simple request from a lonely old man, right? Michael said he'd try. Sarah said she'd let me know. David said maybe. Jennifer didn't even respond. Christmas morning came. I had that roast in the oven by 8 a.m. Set the table for 12. Wrapped presents for all 7 grandchildren. Sat in this very kitchen and watched the clock. 10 a.m. became noon. Noon became 3 p.m. 3 p.m. became dinner time. That beautiful roast dried out in the oven. Those presents sat under the tree like accusations. Not one of them showed up. Not one. You know what the worst part was? At 7 p.m. my phone rang. It was Sarah. I thought maybe she was calling to apologize, to explain. Instead, she asked if I could loan her $300 for her electric bill. On Christmas Day, after standing me up, she had the nerve to ask for money. I don't know who needs to hear this, but if you're still here, maybe you understand what I'm talking about. Subscribe if you want to hear the rest, because this story gets worse before it gets better. That night, I sat in my recliner and really looked at my life. 77 years old, and what did I have to show for all my sacrifice? 4 children who only called when they needed something. 7 grandchildren who barely knew my name. A house full of memories and nobody to share them with. I started thinking about my own father. He died at 72, and I remembered being irritated when he wanted to visit. Remembered rushing off the phone when he called just to chat. Remembered thinking he was needy when really, he was just lonely. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree, does it? But then I thought about something else. I thought about how my father never stopped giving, how he never set boundaries, how he let us take and take and take until he died exhausted and forgotten. I watched him die believing that a parent's job is to sacrifice everything for their children, no matter how old those children get. That's when it hit me. I was going to die the same way he did, used up, empty, waiting for phone calls that never came and invitations that never arrived, unless I stopped. The next morning, I did something that felt revolutionary. I called Michael and told him I wouldn't be helping with his mortgage payment anymore. I'd been supplementing it for 3 years since his business struggles. He got angry, started yelling about how I was abandoning the family, how I was being selfish in my old age, hung up on me. Then I called Sarah, told her I was done being her emergency fund, that her financial problems weren't mine to solve anymore. She cried, said I was punishing her for her ex-husband's mistakes, said I was destroying her children's future. David's response was worse. He accused me of having dementia, said grief from losing Mom had made me mean, threatened to have my mental competency evaluated. Jennifer? She laughed, actually laughed. Said she never expected help from me anyway, and at least now she knew where she stood. That was February 14th, 2024, Valentine's Day. Some irony, right? For 3 weeks they tried everything. Guilt trips, anger, manipulation. Michael showed up at my door with his youngest daughter, trying to use her cuteness to soften me up. Sarah sent me pictures of her kids eating generic cereal instead of name brand, as if that was supposed to make me feel guilty. David threatened to never let me see his boys again. But you know what happened during those 3 weeks? Something beautiful. I started sleeping through the night. I stopped jumping every time the phone rang. I started reading books again. Started taking walks in the morning. Started actually enjoying my coffee instead of rushing through it in case someone needed me. I realized I'd been living in a constant state of anxiety for decades. Always waiting for the next crisis call. Always wondering which child would need what next. Always calculating how much money I had left and how long it would last if they all needed help at once. For the first time in 50 years, I was free. That's when someone once told me there are rules that change after 60. One of them says that sacrifice without boundaries isn't love, it's self-destruction. I wish I'd known that 30 years ago. If you want to know what those rules are, it's in the description. But my children didn't see it as freedom. They saw it as betrayal. The calls kept coming. Not loving calls. Not we miss you calls. Angry calls. Demanding calls. Calls that started with accusations and ended with threats. March 10th, Michael called at 6 in the morning. Woke me up screaming about how his car had broken down, and he needed $1,500 for repairs immediately, or he'd lose his job. When I said no, he called me every name in the book, said I was a heartless old bastard who cared more about money than his own family. March 12th, Sarah called sobbing because her landlord was raising her rent. She needed me to co-sign for a new apartment and pay the security deposit. When I refused, she said I was watching her children become homeless. Said Mom would be ashamed of what I'd become. March 14th, David called demanding I pay for his son's spring break trip because all the other kids are going, and I was ruining his teenage years by being selfish. That night I sat in this kitchen and looked at that old rotary phone on the wall. The same phone Margaret used to call the kids every Sunday. The same phone that used to bring me joy when they were little and wanted to tell Grandpa about their day. Now it was just a weapon they used against me. That's when I made the decision. I picked up my cell phone and went to my contacts. Michael Crawford, delete. Sarah Bennett, delete. David Crawford, delete. Jennifer Morrison, delete. 50 years of being their safety net, and I erased them in 30 seconds. You want to know the truth? My hands didn't shake. My heart didn't break. I felt lighter than I'd felt in decades. The next morning, I woke up at 7 a.m. instead of 5. Nobody had called with an emergency. Nobody needed money. Nobody needed me to fix their problems. I made myself a proper breakfast for the first time in years. Eggs over easy, bacon, toast with real butter. Sat right here at this table and ate every bite. Then I did something I hadn't done in forever. I called my neighbor, Frank Henderson. We'd lived next to each other for 23 years, but I'd always been too busy handling family crises to really talk to the man. Turns out Frank's wife died 6 months ago. We spent 2 hours on the phone comparing notes about loneliness and ungrateful children. That afternoon, I drove to the VA hospital and signed up to volunteer. Started reading to veterans who can't see well anymore. Turns out there are a lot of old men there who understand what I'm going through. Men who gave everything to their families and got nothing back but demands for more. I joined a coffee group at the community center. Started playing chess again. Learned to use the computer at the library and discovered email groups for widowed men over 70. Found out I'm not alone in this experience. For 3 months, I haven't heard from any of my children. You know what? I haven't missed the drama. I haven't missed the crisis calls. I haven't missed the guilt trips or the manipulation or the constant feeling that nothing I gave was ever enough. What I have missed is the idea of them. The children they used to be before they became adults who only valued me for my wallet. I miss the Christmas mornings when they were little and excited to see me. I miss helping with homework and teaching them to ride bikes and showing them how to fix things. But those children are gone. They grew up into people I don't recognize. People who think love means endless financial support. People who mistake boundaries for betrayal. I've started writing letters I'll never send. Letters to the children they used to be. Letters explaining why Grandpa disappeared from their lives. Letters telling them about the man their father used to be before he became an ATM machine. Maybe someday they'll understand. Maybe someday they'll realize that a parent's love doesn't mean saying yes to every demand. Maybe someday they'll call because they miss me, not because they need something from me. But I'm not holding my breath, and I'm not waiting for that phone to ring. Everything I learned about patience, about sacrifice, about trust, it's all in something called the 60-year rule. 9 rules that reverse after 60. I wish someone had given me this 20 years ago. The link is right below this video. Last week I got a letter in the mail from Jennifer, my youngest. No return address, just my name written in her handwriting. For a moment my heart jumped. Maybe she'd realized what she'd lost. Maybe she wanted to apologize. Maybe she missed her old dad. I opened it carefully. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Not an apology, not a declaration of love, not an invitation to reconcile. It was a bill for her son's dental work, with a note that said, "Dad, I know you'll do the right thing. Family takes care of family." I walked outside and put that letter in my burn barrel, watched it turn to ash, felt nothing but relief. Some of you think I'm heartless. Some of you think I've given up on love. But let me tell you what I've learned at 79 that I wish I'd known at 59. Love without respect is just exploitation. Generosity without appreciation becomes obligation. And family that only calls when they need something isn't family at all. It's just expensive acquaintances. I sleep 8 hours a night now. I eat meals sitting down instead of rushing to answer crisis calls. I have conversations with people who actually want to hear my voice, not just my bank balance. I volunteer with veterans who say thank you. I help neighbors who help me back. For the first time in decades, I feel valued for who I am, not what I can provide. My phone number is the same. My address hasn't changed. If any of my children ever want to call just to talk, just to share their lives without asking for anything, they know how to find me. If they ever want to introduce me to their children as a grandfather instead of an ATM, I'm here. But I'm not holding my breath. And I'm not letting them destroy what's left of my peace. Some people say I'll regret this decision, that I'll die alone and bitter. But you know what? I'd rather die alone with dignity than surrounded by people who only tolerate me for my money. I'd rather have silence than conversations that always end with, "Can you help us with?" I'd rather be forgotten by ungrateful children than remembered as the fool who never learned to say no. At 79, I finally learned that the word no isn't cruel. It's necessary. It's the difference between love and enablement. It's the difference between being a father and being a checkbook. If you're sitting there thinking about your own family, about your own boundaries, about your own worth beyond what you can provide for others, listen to me. You don't owe anyone your entire life just because you share DNA. You don't owe anyone your peace of mind just because they call you family. Love is a two-way street. Respect is non-negotiable. And at some point, even parents have to stop sacrificing themselves on the altar of ungrateful children. The silence in this house isn't empty anymore. It's peaceful. It's mine. And for the first time in 50 years, that's enough. That old rotary phone still hangs on my kitchen wall. Sometimes I look at it and remember all the conversations it carried. All the midnight calls from babies who needed their daddy. All the excited calls about school plays and soccer games and first dates. Those were real calls. Calls filled with love instead of demands. Calls that made me feel needed instead of used. Someday, maybe my phone will ring again with that kind of call. A grandchild who wants to know about their grandfather. A child who finally understands the difference between loving someone and exploiting them. Until then, I'm living my life. Not waiting for it, not sacrificing it, living it. And that decision to erase their numbers? Still the best choice I've made after 70. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is stop enabling the people you love most. Sometimes saving yourself is the only way to show them what they've lost. The silence in this house used to terrify me. Now it sounds like freedom.